Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's Digital Making at Home live stream. I'm Christina, and I'm coming to you live from Nebraska.
And I'm Matt, and I'm in Ohio.
Yes, Matt and I are from the Raspberry Pi Foundation, and we're happy to have you here with us today. This live stream is all about all of us coding together. So before we jump in, please say hi in the chat. We want to hear from you. Let us know where in the world you are joining us from. We are broadcasting live to YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch right now, and we'll be able to see your comments. So if you're watching on raspberrypi.org, you can click the title of this video and head over to YouTube so you can join the chat. For those of you who are new, first of all, welcome. We're so excited you're here. Digital Making at Home is all about getting young people just like you coding and creating with technology. Every week we chat with cool people, code together, and see amazing digital making projects from kids just like you. So because of today, we are welcoming the Coolest Projects community to the live stream. So I'm really excited. And Coolest Projects is one of my favorite events. Matt, what is your favorite thing about Coolest Projects?
So Coolest Projects is an awesome expo. It's a showcase of what young people create with technology. And I've gotten the chance to go to a few of these events and have seen so many amazing things, including that's where I met our guest, which is pretty cool.
Yes, yeah, we've actually known our guest for a couple of years, and with Coolest Projects, and just our theme this week is making for social good, and it just made sense to invite our guest here. So today we are chatting with Adarsh Ambati from California. He's going to talk about his experience of Coolest Projects and the projects that he's made that have truly made a difference in the world. He's made a Raspberry Pi-based smart sprinkler and a health monitoring project. Both won accolades at Coolest Projects USA and recent recognition from judges at Coolest Projects International this past summer, so just a few months ago. So let's bring on Adarsh. Welcome, Adarsh.
Welcome.
Hi. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good.
We've got a ton of people here to see you. Hello to Gobal, Lou, Chris. It's great to have you on Facebook and YouTube. They're all here to see you and hear about what you've got to say. That's awesome.
Oh, yes. That's so great. I love, that's my favorite thing is when friends and family jump on and say hi. So shout out to all of the friends of Adarsh and family. We're so happy to have you here. So let's jump right in, Darsh. I would love to know, we connected at Coolest Projects, but actually the last 2 years, at 2018 and 2019 and definitely 2020. And I want to know, just before we jump into Coolest Projects, how did you get started with computer programming? That's always my biggest question. Do you remember your first computer program that you wrote? How did you get started?
Yeah, so my first experience with programming was in the 4th grade. I was really lucky enough to attend a school that had early education in computer science. So I started with a lot of people with Scratch programming. So it's the block-based computer programming. And I don't know, just moving that sprite around the screen with a few simple blocks was just so amazing to me. And then after Scratch, I moved on to Python, and I just really wanted to continue to learn how to computing. So I started doing a lot more Python programming, and my first ever Python program was the really simple Hello World program. And just seeing the computer being able to spit out the words Hello World, it made me feel like I was directly talking to the computer.
Yes, and I feel like so many people can connect with that, right? Just that moment of oh wait, I told the computer to do this and it did it. That's incredible. Oh, do you remember your 4th grade computer science teacher by chance?
I think I don't remember. I don't remember the exact project I did, but I definitely remember the ton of memories I had. So we had a small computer cart, because in 4th grade we were just the computer cart would come around to each class and bring up a bunch of different computers with Scratch already loaded onto it. And I remember every time that computer cart came around, all of us were just so excited to start opening up our laptops and start programming whatever fun thing that we were doing that day.
Wow, that's neat to hear. You having a cart coming. For me, I had to go to a room. There was a specific room that students had to rotate to, the computer lab.
And Romilly in the chat is saying their first experience in computer programming was in 1958.
Oh wow!
If you're in the chat, let us know when you started your journey with computer programming.
Definitely. Well, let's talk about, so this week it is about making for social good. So I'd love to talk, I know this is something you have experience with, like we've seen some of your really neat projects. And what was the first big project that you tackled?
Yeah, so my first big project was the smart community sprinkler system. So essentially what it is that I was able to combine both moisture content information and weather forecasting data to like save water for for most optimal amounts of water for an entire lawn. And the really cool thing about this for me is that it can save water for an entire community, not just one home. So because it has like the device itself has twittering capabilities, it can determine like what percentage the lawn should water and tweet that out to the community. So like the residents can subscribe to the information just by following the account on Twitter, and then use that information to like prevent water wasted during general purpose landscaping.
Oh wow! Well, that's really neat because I think for me as a science, I taught science in California, and we talked about the drought and we talked about wasting water a lot. That was a really, especially when I was a teacher, it was a really big issue. What did it look like to get started with that project and to like test it? Like, did you just go knock on the doors of your neighbors and be like, "Hey, I'm trying"? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, so for the like months of like building the device, I was really like tinkering with it and working on it. And I had a lot of help from my mentors, Johan Sosa, and like my teachers, my science teachers especially, who I would give like a pitch to, and then I would get feedback and come back and tinker with it. And so when I was finally ready to like take the device and start going around to my neighbor, I thought, why don't I try to pilot it in my own community first before like starting to put it in any competitions or anything, because I wanted to like validate it. So I had to go to my community and actually go door to door and knock on 10 homes, which was really stressful for a 6th, 7th grader. And I don't know, but I was just so lucky that I was able to get 10 people or 10 homes that were willing to agree to my pilot study and just follow the Twittering accounts. And so, yeah.
That's so neat. And it's just so much appreciation to your neighborhood and to your community, right? Because then doing that project and completing it brought you to Coolest Projects, and that's how we met. And so what made you want to enter this project into Coolest Projects?
Yeah. So actually right after like the initial successes of my project, I tried to reach out to like many different water companies, but like 11 to 12 year old, an 11 to 12-year-old doesn't really have the credibility that water companies might trust. But so entering into like different competitions is kind of like my way of like trying to gain that credibility and like trying to improve the device as well. Like every time I enter a competition, my thought process was, if I won, my device would gain credibility. And if I didn't, I would get so much good feedback that I could go back and improve the device on my own end. So there were many competitions that my projects didn't win any awards. And I was really glad for that, because of that, I was able to improve my device more and more. And then one day, I received an email from the Broadcom Master Science Fair program for middle schoolers about the Coolest Projects competition. And because my project is based in Raspberry Pi, I felt like I owed it to myself to join this competition, because it's the Raspberry Pi, and that's where the entire system is based around. So I joined the competition, and I absolutely loved it. I mean, the atmosphere at my first Coolest Projects competition was so electric, and everyone there was just so excited to hear about all the young coders and engineers. So yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that definitely, I think it describes our team as definitely electric.
Yes.
And just excited for sure. And I want to go back. I love what you said about the piece where if you won, like you would, but also if you didn't win, you would get a lot of feedback. And that I think is something that's so important. And it's really impressive to me that you as a young person recognize the value of like not winning, that there's still that possibility for feedback and getting better. To be honest, when I was a young person, like if I didn't win, it was a mess. Like I was not happy about it. But honestly, when I came to the Raspberry Pi Foundation, something we talk about is failing. FAIL is your first attempt in learning. And it's so neat to hear. And that I don't doubt is why you've been able to be so successful with this project. Because what happened after Coolest Projects?
Yeah, so after Coolest Projects, I got a lot of attention to my project, and Actually, I'm starting to reach out to different communities now to see if like they're like actual water companies, and I'm getting a lot more traction this time around because of the amazing credibility that Raspberry Pi Coolest Projects competition gave me. And unfortunately, because of the COVID situation, like that's kind of slowed down. But it was really cool to actually be able to see, like, because of the work that I put into it and because of Coolest Project as a whole, I was getting that attention. And I definitely feel like that's one other reason why Coolest Project is something that all young coders should do or should attend, is because I mean it's so amazing too, and you can get all that great attention for your project.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And there is you. So I know your first project with the sprinkler system was Raspberry Pi. This is the project you brought to 2020, which was another Raspberry Pi project. Can you tell us a little bit about this one?
Yeah, so this project is called it's got a really complicated title, but essentially what it is, it's a contactless vital signs monitor. And so there's some really cool techniques with it. It's called like photoplethysmographic imaging.
Whoa.
But yeah, but I first thought of this project, and it has like a kind of neat story along with it. So I first thought of the monitor after my mom, like, she had a third-degree heart block and had to go to the hospital. So there I saw that she was like hooked up to so many different wires and electronics, and a lot of these were just to detect her vital signs. And so these wires not only like physically hindered her recovery, but they also kind of acted as a mental impediment. Like it made her feel like that she wasn't as healthy as she actually was. So after that, I heard about news, like just then, news about like Ebola virus, and a lot of contagious diseases started coming around to the news, and it made it evident that like a need for a contactless vital sign monitor is there. Like there is a need for it. So after identifying the problem, I like moved on to like applying my knowledge of biology and computer science through my Raspberry Pi projects to design a solution, which ended up being my contactless vital signs monitor.
Oh, wow. What kind of sensors did you use for it?
Yeah, so originally my contactless vital signs monitor is just a thermal sensor and an infrared camera. So it can detect 5 vital signs just from those two different cameras, and that way it's all contactlessly. It's all contact. So contactless. Sorry. Yeah. So because it's really simple, there's just two main cameras, and it can detect all the 5 vital signs. Like you can get rid of all those things, like having to have so many different wires for your project for the vital signs.
Can you explain that? Like, how does it detect the vital signs without touching you? Like, how is it going to measure my heart rate without touching me?
Yeah. So for skin temperature, we use the thermal camera, and that's pretty simple. We just detect the skin temperature of the patient. Heart rate is a little bit more complicated. So it's this technique called remote photoplethysmography, and it's essentially like if you have a Fitbit or anything, it's the same principle of how Fitbit is able to detect your heart rate, just from a distance, right? It's the remote aspect of it. So essentially the camera is able to like look at you in your video feed and split it into like the green, red, and blue light. So we isolate the green light, and we use OpenCV software to isolate the forehead region, and because that's where a lot of blood vessels are. And if you want to think of it like this, so as the heart expands, there's a lot more blood in the heart, and there's less blood in like the peripheral capillaries or the blood vessels in your forehead. And then when the heart contracts, there's more blood in your forehead, and more blood means that there's more red color, so more green light is being absorbed. So there's like super slight fluctuations in green light that relate back to how the heart expands and contracts. And if you use like certain optical techniques, you're able to capture that. And that's essentially what the principle of remote photoplethysmography is. And that's how we're able to capture the heart rate. But another thing that was really found was that like in that wave of fluctuations, it's actually a composite wave. There's so much more information than just the heart rate. You can actually capture things like the respiratory rate, and you can use the heart rate to predict what your blood pressure might be, and even you can use the red and blue light to detect blood oxygen levels. So that's kind of like how we detect all 5 vital signs in a simple like manner, like of explaining it. But yeah.
Whoa, I'm still processing. That's so wow. Like that was that. I was like, did you know about? Oh, do you have something to say, Matt? Go ahead.
I was gonna say the chat is going wild here for you, Alex, Romilly, Gobal, all of them are cheering for your great project.
So, Adarsh, how did you learn about all of that? Like, was this something that you gained this knowledge having supported your mom when she was in the hospital? What research, or did you have to do research to develop this understanding of how to actually use these monitors?
Yeah, so I can definitely say that I am no technical expert in any of these principles, but after identifying the problem, I set out to doing research. So actually, I would say the majority of my time doing this project was research. And that's true for almost any engineering project, is you need to figure out how you're actually planning to do it before you can start coding it, right? And so I had to do the research. I had to find like these obscure papers on photoplethysmography. And then for, I think the one that was the hardest were like blood oxygen levels and blood pressure, because those aren't traditionally remote. Like you have to have like a sensor that's touching you. So I think I was able to like look through many different research papers, and I think I ended up finding like a thesis paper, not even a published research paper, that like was able to, model how blood pressure works based off the heart rate, your height, your weight, and your age. And because of that, I was able to incorporate it into the project. So the most important factor to me for building this was definitely by far researching and just pouring hours over the different articles and research papers.
Wow, man. And in terms of, I remember actually using this device in March when we had Coolest Projects and trying it out. And oh, there's us. Oh, we were such babies. This was only 7 months ago, for the record, to folks watching. But yeah, and this is actually a photo because you won. This was the first time we ever did this. You won our overall winner for Coolest Projects USA, because this project, I think the judges were just absolutely blown away by it. So again, like, just congratulations on that. And what little babies we were. It's such a neat time. So as you're talking through all of if we now thinking about like some of the kids who are watching, what coding language did you use to create this project? Like how did you result in these measurements happening from the sensors? What was the middle piece?
Yeah, so I can talk a little about both projects. So the Sprinkler project was almost all Python. It was, I think the only couple of times was like when I was writing a cron job just to like time the program. But that was like my first ever big project, and I was only like really confident in Python. So when I came down to do the contactless vital signs monitor, I also started coding the majority of the work in Python. So all the video cameras and the main part of the program that converts all the video feed into into the vital signs is all in Python. Just some of the sensors like the MLEX and the 640, the thermal iron sensor, like that has to have like some C. So I had to code in that, and that's where like my mentor came in, because I'm by no means an expert in C. So I had to get a lot of like help with that. But yeah, so that's what the thing is, like, if you know one language really well, you're able to like code so much in that language, because any language is versatile if you know how to like use it really well. So I really know how to use Python. Like, that's my favorite language. I think it's like really intuitive.
Mine too.
And, yeah, it's just really intuitive for me. And so that's what I decided to code most of my projects on.
Wow.
Hammerfrog on Twitch is asking about the model of Pi you used and more about the hardware.
Yeah, so I think I used the Raspberry Pi 3B for my Sprinkler project, and I used the new Raspberry Pi for my heart rate monitor, just because I wanted like the new one. Yeah, just because the newer model always works better. But yeah, I used that's what I used for the Raspberry Pi. And then I think for the Sprinkler system, I had a sensor, the moisture sensor. And that was the one that, you had to have if you want to do a moisture sensor based Sprinkler project. But the really cool aspect for both the projects to me was the software more than the hardware. Just like being able to like use the different API language, the APIs, and using that to like the fullest extent. Like this for the Sprinkler project, the Twitter API to like tweet out the information, and then using the Python programming to like convert the video feed into the vital signs, which is something that I thought was really cool.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what you were saying about like you did a lot of research and you also had a mentor. And I think that's so important for young people to hear that these projects don't just come out of thin air from one person. There's an inspiration for you. It was your community, it was your mom. And then there's asking for help. And that is such an important part, and getting help and like working with other folks. Like that is a big part of coding, a big part of making is that community piece. And that's why I love Coolest Projects, because there's that when kids come and they share their projects, you connect with folks, you hear their ideas. Like you said, you get feedback from judges. That's such an amazing part of it. And it's so neat. And I appreciate you coming on and just talking about like it. I had to do research. I had a mentor. Like I needed help. And that's so important because hopefully in the future, you're going to be able to help another young person come up with a really neat project. Yeah. I'm curious for folks, make sure to let us know. I know you're getting a lot of shout outs. If you have any questions, we love getting your questions in the chat.
There's a few. So Alex was asking about the mentors. How many have you had since you got started with, coding?
Yeah, so I really had one really great mentor for computer science, and his name is Johan Sosa, and I actually met him in a really unique way. So I can talk a little bit about that. So in the 6th grade, I have an older brother, by the way. His name is Adarsh Ambati. Just a shout out. So
shout out.
Yeah. So my brother, who's like really big into biology, and in like actual biotechnology, he goes to this community lab when he was in high school and I was in 6th grade. And I really just wanted to tag along with him, just like to be the annoying little brother, just to see what's going on there. And so I used to accompany him to this community lab called BioCurious. And I really wanted to do a lot of like biotech stuff with him. But I was just so young. So I couldn't like actually do any of the lab work there because there were age restrictions, things like that.
Right.
But then over there, I met so many cool people who were like, hey, if you can't start doing bio stuff, why don't you start doing computer science? And so one of the persons there, his name is Johan Sosa. He is a trained computer scientist, but he does DIY biology. So like because he just loves it. And he introduced me to the Raspberry Pi, and I'm so thankful for everything that he did because
so are we.
Yeah, he introduced me to the Raspberry Pi, and that's how I got started doing like these low-cost projects, because of both the versatility of the Raspberry Pi, but also because it's just so cheap that anyone can pretty much program on it. So yeah.
That's great.
And
go ahead.
Yeah, I would recommend, like, if you have a local lab or like a computer lab nearby, or place where a community can just come together and do different projects, whether it's biology or whether it's computer science. Yeah, there's just so many different cool people that you can meet there who could one day become mentors on like all of your different projects. So yeah.
And Romilly on Facebook is asking about your projects and whether you're sharing them on GitHub. Are you sharing the source code out? Are you keeping that to yourself for now?
Yeah, so I'm planning on sharing the Sprinkler project on GitHub. I'm thinking of trying to, make the Vital Signs Monitor into a company somewhere down the line. But the community Sprinkler project I'm definitely going to plan on sharing that on GitHub. I haven't done that yet, so it's one of my task lists. Just because that is it's a community-centered project, so I feel like the entire community should have that.
That's great.
Oh, wow. Yeah. It's really neat. Having you come on the stream, but we also noticed like you've been in some articles, you've also been in some podcasts. What has it been like to be getting so much positive attention for something you created?
Yeah, so it just feels like amazing that my work is being validated and approved by so many different experts and leaders in their respective fields. And to an extent, it kind of feels like, is this really happening? I feel like, I don't know, it's not like, I feel like my project is good and all, but it's kind of also a little bit scary too, like that I might not like live up to the expectation in the next project and things like that. But whenever that thought like crosses my mind, I just, like to remind myself that projects aren't like inherently successful. Like they have to come across like these different failures and then grow from there. Like none of my projects were successful or good even just to begin with. But like after multiple rounds of criticism and then thinking about it and then tinkering, I was able to enhance them to like where they are today. So yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Because I'm a maker too. I've created things, nothing as advanced as you have, but like that feeling of you get a great one and lots of people are excited about it, and the next one you make, it doesn't stick, or there's something but you truck on, you keep trying things. It's great.
Yeah, that's so important. I've heard that a lot, like in both the making community, but also like in the art community. If you have a film, a screenplay, a book, like you're like, oh, okay, it's good. Now what do I do? And like, can I make another one that meets this one? And like, I think it's so great that you've identified, Darsh, that like, okay, I'm just going to keep trying. I'm going to value that feedback, and knowing that what you first put out there is not going to be what you end up with. Like what you first started with when you first created your sprinkler system is not what ended up at Coolest Project. There were so many iterations, and that's such an important part of it. And it's really that like determination and focus is such an important, like you have the ideas, but you have to be willing to take the feedback and modify and really do that work.
Yeah, for sure.
Neat. So what are you thinking about next? Like we started with you talking about 6th grade, and I know you are a junior now. What are you thinking about in terms of an education, like career path?
Yeah, so for me, I am planning on going into environmental engineering. So I just really love computer science, computer engineering, the environment, and biology. And so I feel like the total encompassing of all those 3 different fields, which are really spread out, is environmental engineering. And it's this really interdisciplinary field, but I feel like you can make a lot of impact on it because there's just so many, I think like the environment is one space where computer science is like heavily needed to develop and engineer these projects in order to actually help better the environment and the climate as a whole, because that's a problem that we're all dealing with that needs to be solved.
Yeah. Is this something, so our theme of like making for social good and you talking about like environmental engineering, is this something that's always been a passion of you? Was there an event or was there a person that got you really interested in, and clearly like your investment in the community and just really helping the world?
Yeah, so I think actually it all comes back down to like the root of my sprinkler project. So like that to me started like my interest in like the environmental sciences. So it was like one day, like when we were just going to school and in the rain, like this is back when California was still experiencing that like record-breaking drought, and like so many people had to like cut off their water supply, and cities were like incurring like fines, like for people, like if you have runoffs on water, like you're gonna be fined. And I don't know, just for me to like being able to experience that and to being able to see like I have a creek in front of my house, and every day before school, before the drought, I would like hear like all the frogs and the crickets croaking. But then like when the drought hit, all that went away. And it's like, I can actually experience the effect of climate change and changes in the environment in real time. And so that really hit home for me. And that instilled in me like the understanding of the environment. And then of course, for my interest in biology, it was when my mom had that 3rd-degree heart block, because I was able to like see real time like the effect that biology and the things that like medicine and healthcare can have on like saving lives. So yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it says a lot of like personal experiences have really like driven you towards the work that you've done, the projects you've made, and your career path. So I think that sounds like something for like young people, like go with your passions, your personal experiences. What other advice do you have maybe someone who's just getting started with digital making or coding? What would you tell them?
Yeah, for sure. So anyone who's just starting off with digital making and coding, I would say start by learning the basics first and beginning to code like super small projects that are just fun for you. Like my first ever project was like just making a Scratch game, or the Hello World program that we talked about. Like it doesn't have to be anything like to save the world or anything just yet, right? But it's just so that you can get your interest in computer science and start developing those skills. And then I would also like to say, like, online today, there are so many different free resources that exist if you really want to like increase your capacity for computer science. And that is also if like your school doesn't provide like programming classes themselves. Another really useful strategy that I just really like to recommend is going to join clubs like your community labs, like Bicurious, or even like if you have a Coder Dojo nearby, like they're like really helpful because not only do you get to learn about the techniques themselves, but you get to meet like this mind share of like so many people around you and all the cool projects that they are working on, and you can learn from that too. Like these organizations, they have like this wealth of knowledge that you can just tap into and just learn from there. So like just exposing yourself to more about like the computer science in the field is how you develop the interest in programming, and then you develop the skills, and then you can see that like problems in the world and use those skills that you've developed to actually solve them.
Wow.
Great advice.
Such good advice. I'm also going to personally take that advice.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much, Adarsh. Like, this has been so much fun. I'm sure you're getting more shout outs.
Yes. Yes. Tons of people in the chat love your work, and they'll be following you.
Yes. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Adarsh, for joining us, for telling us about Cool's projects, for sharing about your projects. It really meant a lot to just be able to connect with you again. We haven't seen each other in 7 months, and I can't wait till we can reunite in person for sure. It was so good to see you.
Yeah, it was great to see you all, and I loved this conversation. It was so fun.
Yeah, we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Oh, that was awesome.
Yes. Oh, it just reminds me how much I miss the Coolest Projects community. Like that.
Yeah.
That was our last event. That was like our last event before the pandemic. Before it all hit. So it was really neat to connect with folks. And if you're part of the Coolest Projects community, don't be afraid to reach out. We'd love to hear from you. We love to know what you're up to. It means so much to get to see folks like Adarsh who've created a project and have gone on to take the feedback and like what they've learned from the event to continue on with their project. It's really amazing.
It's incredible. Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Adarsh. Thank you to our Coolest Projects community for joining us for this stream. And it was so great to see so many of you folks connecting with us at home.
Yeah. Shout out to Gobal, Romilly, Alex, Rakesh, Hammerfrog on Twitch. Oh, we got people on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Two-Faced Titan on Twitter,
Great
Lou
name.
on Facebook. A ton of you have joined us, and we really appreciate you joining us for Digital Making at Home. It's a lot of fun, especially when you're able to chat with us.
Yes. Thank you all so much. And if you're inspired like me and you want like us to try and just get started with a social good project, we actually have a project, a water use calculator project. So you can go to rpf.io/water. And this is a Scratch project where you can make a water usage calculator to help people think about how much water they use. And then you're also going to write code that draws a chart to compare the amount of water used in various like different activities. So as a science teacher in California, I know I mentioned that like I talk with students about water usage. And so this is a really great project to get started. So definitely check it out. That is all we have time for this week, but don't worry. We have another live stream next week, same time, same place. Thank you all for being here for the Raspberry Pi Foundation's Digital Making at Home live stream. You can go to rpf.io/home to check out past streams, to connect with us. And I hope we'll see you next week. Until then, stay safe and healthy. Bye.
Bye.